Today's share is about the Beis Halevi on the Agada, and we'll incorporate maybe some other comments from other Mefarshim as well. There's some beautiful Beis Halevis throughout the Parashiyos of Shmos, Boy, and I'm going to get to some of them. Hopefully we'll develop a theme a little bit that we could appreciate during the Seder. One thing that I would like to mention first was Sfas Emes that I saw over Shabbos, and we know last night we've heard tragic news about a family that was Nebuch was in a fire. 7 children were killed in New York, and one family. Terrible story. And the last week we spoke about Vatzetias Mitachas Sivlais Mitzrayim. So Pashup Pshat, that means, and I'll take you out from the burdens of Mitzrayim. Sevel is something that a person carries. They carry a weight on their shoulder. They carry tremendous burdens. Sfas Emes says from his father that Sivlais Mitzrayim means B'derech Drush, that Hashem will take us out of our ability to be able to feel that we can be Soivel Mitzrayim. It's not so bad. That we can live with this. We're comfortable in the Galus. We like the Egyptian way of life. It's alright. It's comfortable. It's a geschmack. It's fun. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come to a point where Hashem's going to say, no, you're not going to be able to handle it. You're going to realize that Mitzrayim is it's disgusting. And you don't want this to be a part of you. You don't want to be there. So he says this is what brings about that's what we need to bring about the Geula. They needed to come to cry out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu from a point where they said we can't bear it anymore. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu first sent Moshe Rabbeinu, it seemed like the first part of Moshe Rabbeinu's shlichus was somewhat useless. Klal Yisrael, the Shiva started getting harder, and they came and they only got worse, and they're crying. But that crying out was actually the beginning of the Geula, because when they started saying, we can't bear this is terrible, that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, that's what we need, that we need that crying out. I want to say a point from the Beis Halevi. Beis Halevi says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu even knows our tsar even more than we do. Sometimes you have a person, L'mashal, that suffered tremendously. They're the son of a rich man. They a great wealth, and they go through exile. They go through some terrible fate that befalls them. Now they're poor. They're suffering, and they have nothing. They don't know where the next meal is from. And the person thinks to himself, it's terrible. I'm hungry. Where's my next meal going to come from? And the rent collector is coming to collect the rent. I'm going to be on the street. I don't know what's going to be. And this is what he's crying about. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he knows this person. He knows who his father was. He knows how he started out. He knows how his grandparents were. He knows where this person fell from. He didn't fall from having an average parnasa. He was fine. He knew he could go to the grocery store. He could buy whatever food he wants, and now he's hungry. That's not where he fell from. He fell from much higher than that. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows Klal Yisrael tsar even more than we do. So the pasuk says in Parashat Shmos, "Ra'ai ra'isi ani ami." HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I see the ani, the poverty or the oppression of my nation. And it says in the end of the pasuk, Ki yadati es ma'chovav, I understand the pains of Klal Yisrael. So the Beis Halevi says that Klal Yisrael, when they were in Mitzrayim, most of them didn't understand the great levels that the Avos were on. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, how they became Nevi'im, and what great levels they were on, and now how they descended to such depths. So they're only crying out because of the Naiksim, because they're getting whipped, that they should work more, they should work more. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Pakayid pakadati eschem, ve'es ha'asri lachem b'Mitzrayim. Two pakadatis. Pakayid pakadati. Es ha'asri lachem, pakadati eschem, ve'es ha'asri lachem b'Mitzrayim. So, he says there's two bechinas. One is what is asri lachem b'Mitzrayim, what's being done to you now. I see what you're suffering and what's being done to you. But I also know with the madrega that you were on from before, and that I'm remembering, that I'm coming to save you from. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, there's a medrash, we studied Pesah Levi before last year, and he brings a lot from the medrash. So the medrash says, in the beginning of Eicha, Rabbi Yochanan Pasach, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ani daime hayom la'adam sheyesh le ben yechidi. I'm like somebody has a son that's the only son. V'asvay chuppah, u'meis b'tay chuppasai. That this, when I see Klal Yisrael, this talking about in Eicha, Klal Yisrael going into Golus. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this is like my only son, and I made him a chuppah, and then he died. He didn't just die, my son, he's my only son, he died b'tay chuppasai. She'en lecha ka'ev. You don't understand my pain. You don't understand what it is. But Klal Yisrael, when it's time to go into Golus, with the Churban Beis HaMikdash also, it was after a number of generations of becoming Klal Yisrael becoming more degenerate and losing their madrega, and even before the Churban they started to fall. So that's why some of them went into Golus earlier. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says this, that I mashkiach in Klal Yisrael, I see what's going on, and I think back to Klal Yisrael's madrega that we were on. So this is going to help us by the Seder, I think, understand the idea, the concept that we maskil genus to Messiah and B'Shevach, and we start all the way back, and we go back to the Avos, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and he chose them from being Avdei Avodah Zarah, and he made them into who they were. But then they went back into Golus Mitzrayim, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu took them out of Mitzrayim. So when we understand the picture from the beginning, then we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the one hand that he chose Avram, and he wouldn't have been, even Avram wouldn't have become anything without HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking him and guiding him. But at the same time, once he did, the Golus Mitzrayim gains this whole perspective. Now we understand that it was much worse than in Mitzrayim than just any nation being persecuted. It was much worse than that. It was Klal Yisrael, and therefore it was not just a shibud aguf, it was a shibud aruchni, and it was much worse than otherwise, if we would think about it otherwise. But now the Geula brought back that which the potential brought us back to the Malas Avaisam. The Ramban says in Hakdama to Sefer Shemais that's what the Geula did for us. It brought us back to the potential of our fathers. So I was thinking of a mashal. The mashal is to a person who takes a seed and they put it in the ground, and the seed becomes rotten underground, decayed, and turns into almost dirt, and then it grows, sprouts forth, and this one seed was part of one fruit, an apple, and now comes out a whole tree, a whole tremendous apple tree with tons and tons of apples year after year. So that was what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to Klal Yisrael Mitzrayim. It wasn't something that was some Russia, Paro, dictator, evil tyrant did to Klal Yisrael. This was something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a plan for us, that we should go down to Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm sending you down to Mitzrayim, and I'm going to come back up with you. And this is what it was like. It wasn't when Klal Yisrael started. When we left Mitzrayim, we became a nation. We were like we were born. But we weren't born that was the beginning. That was it. Everything starting from scratch. This was starting from the avos, the seed that they planted that needed to be taken through this shibud, and then was ready to fulfill its destiny. That's what we were like when we left Mitzrayim. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with us the whole time, and He says, I know, Ki Yadati is Machayvav. I'm with you the whole time, and I see the generations of what was. And the Gula, the Meir V'Yameinu, is going to be like that also. Which one of us feels what it was like, the Madregas, that our Avais and our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, the Madregas that Klal Yisrael was on a few generations ago. And Kol Shekin, a few generations before that. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I know where you come from, and I see where you are. I see the great depths that you've fallen from such heights. And He's with us. He's going to take us out. So when we are taking, we're on the one hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, and on the other hand, we know that Nisan is a month which we're Asidim Ligoil, and this is a month where we're looking forward to the Yeshua, to the Gula Asida, and this is part and parcel of our Seder. We end up B'Yushalayim, L'Shana above Yushalayim HaBenuya. That's where we're never getting comfortable in this Galus. We're always longing that Kadosh Baruch Hu should take us out and should be Gailas, the Gula Shlema. So the Beis Levi speaks a lot about this, and I want to focus on this theme. One thing that I saw, a beautiful idea I want to share with you from the Maral. And last week we spoke about the Arba Kaisais. So the Maral says, and the Kli Yakar, his Talmud, and the Rav Hirsch, there could be a lot of Mefarshim go on this path, that when we have Arba Lashonis of Geula, but there were also HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Abraham Avinu by the Bris Bein Besarim. He said to him that what's going to befall your children, Ki ger yeh zaracha be'eretz lo lohem. They'll be strangers in a land that's not theirs. Va'avadim, they'll be enslaved. Ve'inu aisa, and they'll be tortured. They'll feel tremendous inui. Arba me'ah shana. So says the Maral that this is what was the first three Lashonos of Geula. It says that so first from the hardest one, from the Inoi, from the terrible oppression and torture, from the burdens, and then what it says, they'll be saved from being avodim, from being slaves, that they aren't free men, that they're under the rule of a master. And then it says, so the Geula is from being Gerim. Like it says, Ki ger yeh zaracha. So it started, the Shibud started with Ki ger yeh zaracha. Then it proceeded to Va'avodim. And then it got worse, the Avodah got worse, and it was Inu Aisam. But with the time of the Geula, Kodesh Baruch Hu takes off the worst first. So first it was taking off civilized Mitzrayim from the Inoi, and then from the Avdos, and then finally from even the Geras, even from just being a Ger. A Ger is a stranger in a foreign land who's no rights, nobody cares about him. Kodesh Baruch Hu comes and says, I will be your Gael. I'll be the one to redeem you. There'll be somebody to care about you. And nobody cares about the atrocities that are befalling you. I'll give the Egyptians some of the medicine that they've been feeding you. So I'll be your Gael. I'll be the one to take you and look after you. Be your relative, the one that cares about you, that comes to redeem you. So says the Maral that now with this we can have a different understanding. What it says in Maseches Psachim, that there's halachas of what of the whole Seder that has halachas, but the Mishnah speaks about the Arba Kaisais, and it says, between these kaisais that were mentioned, the first one and the second one and the third one, a person is allowed to drink. But bein shlishi l'revi lo yishteh. A person is not allowed to drink between shlishi l'revi. So, okay, one shot is that the yayin sheba'achar suda is mishaker. A person shouldn't get drunk. It's not during the suda. It looks like he's being mosif ala kosos. Before this, he's still in his meal. Why is he drinking now? But whatever the pshat is, what's the deeper understanding? That you shouldn't have anything interrupt between the third cup and the fourth cup. Because the third cup is Ugalti Eschem. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm taking you out. I'm saving you. I'm redeeming you from Mitzrayim. And the fourth one is V'lakachti Eschem li lo'am. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm taking you to me as a nation. You're going to have a relationship with me, and you're going to get the Torah, and you'll be my people, and you'll be my avadim, you'll be my servants, you'll do my mitzvahs. So, if that's the case, so then we shouldn't interrupt, because we have to know that the tachlis of the geula was to get to v'lakachti eschem li lo'am. So ben shlishi l'revi lo yishteh. You shouldn't have a hefsek between v'ga'alti and v'lakachti. Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is telling us that we have to know that I took you out to be li'as li, to be my nation. So that's where we're holding in the Seder.
But that's very good for the generation who's actually brought out from Mitzrayim. What about people in that generation who were born and died in Mitzrayim? What was their purpose in the grand scheme of things? You know, for whatever reason, you know, because Baruch Hu said, okay, you're going to be a stranger, you're going to be given in a strange land, and so on and so forth. Because that was the plan.
Right.
So, you know, I understand a nation is for what they have done are going to be enslaved, and then as time goes on, the Baruch says, okay, enough of the slavery. Now I'm going to take you out.
Right.
If it's the same generation, I can understand. But you're talking about 210 years
Yeah.
where people actually were born and
So
died.
I'm thinking while you're talking, and we have to think about this question. It's an excellent question. For us, let's ask the same question, and maybe it's not as hard for us to deal with it. But we'll take Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So they never lived to see the Geula from Mitzrayim, to see Klal Yisrael come back into the land of Eretz Yisrael. It was just a promise to their children, and was so. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they didn't see this. Even the Dor that got saved from Mitzrayim, they were perished in the Midbar. Right? So they also didn't get to Eretz Yisrael. They got saved from Mitzrayim. And let's say our fathers, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, at least our great-grandparents definitely aren't alive anymore. I don't know if anyone in this room has great-grandparents alive. But, so they were longing for the Geula. And here we are. And they were in a long gullus, thousands of years. And they suffered tremendously in the Holocaust and other terrible times. And so what do they get from it? So bringing us closer to the Geula, but what do they get from it? So I think that maybe on some level it's easier for us to deal with the more recent generations, because we believe firmly that they're part of the destiny of Klal Yisrael. And they are going to have Kriyas HaMesim, and they're going to be on the train with Klal Yisrael for all generations.
That the destiny of Kodesh Baruch Hu seems to be more concerned with the destiny of Bnei Yisrael, not necessarily the individual.
But the individual who's part of it will have Kriyas HaMesim, and they'll definitely. They have a concept of nitzchias, of everlasting life. So the question that I pose to you is, so when does it start from? Does it start from the generation that left Mitzrayim when we became Klal Yisrael? Does it start from the Avos? What about all the generations in between? The Shvatim? What about what? This destiny of Klal Yisrael, that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim, that they're going to be part of Klal Yisrael's future.
They're going to give Abraham the first bris, and they promised him. That was the first time we ever heard of it.
So if so, the question is, are all these generations that were in Egypt, they were in Mitzrayim, they were suffering in this Avdus, in this Enoid, so are they now just building blocks for Klal Yisrael?
Yeah.
Or they themselves are going to be part of it?
They could be part of it later. We don't know Hashem's ways. We don't know the
Well, if it all started already from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we know Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are still with Klal Yisrael, so it's a good chance to say, maybe we have to find the better sources, that all the generations in between as well, the Shvatim also, and then the 70 nations, 70 Nefashos, they went down to Mitzrayim, and then their children, right? Doravi Yashuvu Heina. So then there was 2 generations in between until Moshe Rabbeinu. So perhaps we can say that.
It's not like any question when someone passes away, especially young. We ask the same question: Why? We don't know. We don't have answers. We don't. That was part of the bigger picture, and that person had to have put in place, so to speak, in Shemayim.
Right. But even that person.
Gula. So these that died in Mitzrayim first, the 210 years, the ones that didn't make it out, was also part of the big plan, and some of them maybe didn't deserve to do some Mason, they won't get it. Maybe some will. I don't know. We can't answer.
We can't answer, but it definitely makes us feel better if they have some eternity, right? Definitely, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't take away schar of anyone. So anyone, even before Yetzias Mitzrayim, a person had merits, a person was somehow brought schus to Klal Yisrael, for sure he gets rewarded for everything that they brought about.
I mean, you could think all the suffering, they suffered too. Wasn't a suffer. It's more likely that they will be by Tzias HaMesim.
Klal Yisrael,
from those
we don't realize
there,
yeah.
Because they suffered so much and didn't even make it out. They suffered the most, and they didn't see the Gula. They didn't see the going out of Mitzrayim. So they're on a level probably that they will be there by Tzias HaMesim.
Very, very definitely. Probably that makes a lot of sense, right? Makes more sense, and no one's reward is taken away from them. That's for sure. And this generation, these generations, they had a Messiah that they were living with, and they were passing on to their children, and that was that there's going to be a Geula. And they were waiting for the Goya. They felt at tremendous levels, but they held on to some identity that we are Jews, and there were Yidden that throughout the generations they were persecuted. They couldn't have learning Torah, they couldn't have observance of mitzvahs, and they became Amaratim Gemurim. They knew nothing, totally ignorant. But they knew one thing. They knew we're Jewish, and this is something we don't give up, and we're holding on to, and we have a destiny as a Jewish people. What that meant to them when they didn't have education was something very little. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that they are Einsim, and that this isn't their fault. And as long as HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees into them, he sees that this is going to stand in their merit, because they're really Einsim. And this Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't take Klal Yisrael to a point where he took a building, he destroyed the building, and now the shattered pieces is much harder to put back together, and then there was no point, there was no benefit, and then he pastes together all the pieces again, and now there's a building that's all cracked, and all the different pieces of glass are all back together again. So what was the point in destroying it? And Baruch Hu knew that this was the way to build Klal Yisrael. This was the way, and to taking them down to the Tichducha, Diyuta HaTachtoina, to the lowest level, and then Baruch Hu saying, I'm going to bring you back up from that. That's what Klal Yisrael needed. We of course we can't understand how it is and why it is, but this was something that was like it's a muscle. Like we can't understand that. It's like a seed that's planted.
I know somebody. They have the same concept by some drug addicts we have.
Sure.
They take them out into the forest somewhere. I know firsthand. I don't mean firsthand like to judge, but I know firsthand.
People, people.
And they take them down and they break them down to the bone, to nothing. They sleep. It's raining. Your problem. You want hot food? Make a fire. You then go to the washroom. Find a place to go. They break them down to nothing, and then they rebuild them.
Well, that's one technique.
It works well for this place. There's 3 places in the U.S.
Anyway, that's Rabbi speak.
Well, the fact is that because we don't know at this point in time what actually happens for souls or for both those who have left us, it's very possible that that generation are getting their reward even as we speak right now. In Rabbi because we don't know what happens to a
Definitely. Yeah.
I'd hate to think that's true because they'd be looking down and going, look at these dummies.
Well, the neshama is a true, it's rachayim, Hashem lekacha.
It's very difficult because we've always learned that the ikar is the neshama and the body is just a vehicle.
Okay. I want to say, apart from the Beis Halevi, along these lines we've been speaking, the pasuk says, "Vayar Elokim es bnei Yisrael." HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw Klal Yisrael. Vayeda Elokim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew. What does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew? He saw Klal Yisrael. So the Yalkut, the Medrash brings that some of us have heard this. I think it's probably by the Kriyas Yamsuf, but the Yalkut says that the Sar Mitzrayim, the Malach of Mitzrayim, and the Kitrug and Klal Yisrael. And it said, the Klal Yisrael served the Avodah Zarah. And the answer to the taina of the Malach of the Egyptians, their angel, the prosecuting angel against Klal Yisrael, was Halalu Abdu Mitach Shibod Mitach Tira Fadas. Klal Yisrael was only serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of the Shibud, because they were enslaved and because they were persecuted, and that's why they succumbed to these levels of Avodah Zarah. So the Beis Halevi says that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could know whether a person is really an Einis, because a person could have a tremendous excuse. Their excuse could be it's impossible for them to do a certain mitzvah, to fulfill a certain thing. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what would be, if you didn't have that reason, would you do it? Is that really the reason why you're not doing it? Is it because you can't? Or is it because you don't want to? And that's not something that you believe in or willing to sacrifice for if you could, and so on. So, really, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only one who could say, I know that Klal Yisrael in Mitzrayim, they're doing Avodah Zarah, but they're only doing it because of the Shibud, and they wouldn't do it otherwise. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could say, I made on them, that they wouldn't do this otherwise. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that they fell to this level because of the Shibud that was on them. And that's what it means by Yeda Elokim.
What do you mean? They have to survive the kosher, so therefore they...
Oh, what's the connection to them?
What's the connection between the hard work and Avodah Zarah?
Well, part of what the Egyptians... I think the first level is that a person who doesn't have a Menuchas HaNefesh, who doesn't have... can't use their seichel to make decisions, they're under tremendous pressure, then they grab at straw, they grab at sticks, whatever. They think something could help them, anything that it's this prevalent ideas around them. So that's something that maybe could help. That's what they grab for, and they don't have like their own, especially Klal Yisrael, their avodim. Besides the fact that they're persecuted, they don't have any. They're losing their own pride. So if they're losing their own pride, So they take what's popular. They adopt the popular culture because they don't feel like they have some heritage that's precious. So they grab what's around them. So because they were swallowed up in Egypt, and they were...
But not all of them were swallowed up. We have a whole bunch of people living in Goshen.
Yeah, but that's in the beginning. In the beginning, they were just in Goshen. In the beginning, they were just amongst themselves. Then they started spreading out until the point where Kadosh Baruch Hu had to skip over the houses of the Jewish people because they were living amongst the Egyptians.
But there were also...
there was Shevet Levi that wasn't part of the persecution.
Yeah.
I imagine they weren't serving Avodah Zarah either. And that was a schutz for Klal Yisrael. But there definitely was amount of, we'll call it, adapting to what was around them, that being like what was considered great in their times and in their surroundings. And so Kadosh Baruch Hu was saying that I know that it's only because of this shibud, tiruf hadas, that they're considered einstein, and therefore he said Allah of the mitach shibud and mitach tiruf hadas shema atadan al shayge kemezid balaines kiratzain. Because they're shaygim, they're anusim, they couldn't be able to do this. They wouldn't fall to this otherwise. It's a lady gives an amazing, very interesting mashal about living in Eretz Yisrael b'zman hazeh, and he writes that there's a halachic thing that there's a law that a person who didn't have children for 10 years, so they could divorce their wife because she's a good wife, but they won't have children, and it's already 10 years. So it's learned out from Avraham Avinu, but either way, he could divorce. Avraham Avinu didn't divorce his wife, but we learn part of this concept from him. But
would this apply even now these days? Because now we can tell where the problem lies, whether it's with the man or whether it's with the woman.
Okay, that's a good shaila. It's a good shaila. This is a difficult
sugya. I didn't expect an answer, but I'm saying...
I imagine that these could play a factor, definitely could play a factor, and we're not saying that they have to, and should never know such things. But the Paiskim say that in Chutz La'aretz it doesn't apply, in Eretz Yisrael it does apply, and the reason is given in Paiskim is Dilma Avain Yeshivasei b'Chutz La'aretz Garam Lei Shlo Yolda Ishtay. Maybe the reason why he didn't have a baby is not because he can't have children with his wife. Maybe it's because he's not living in Eretz Yisrael, and he really should be living in Eretz Yisrael. And the avain of living in Chutz La'aretz, that's what's garim they didn't have the children. So the hafla, Bein Achrayim writes, the Levi quotes the hafla, that why is this so? There's a Taisus in the end of Ksuvas. The hafla holds that we paskin like this, one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Chaim Kayin, that in his times at least, that there was no chiyuv to be ola, to go to Eretz Yisrael and bizman hazeh, because of the terrible difficulties that were involved and the terrible situation, the difficulties in getting there and the difficulties in living there and settling there, and it was the Rabbeinu Chaim Kayin speaks about the difficulties in keeping the mitzvahs that were there. The person won't be able to keep the mitzvahs, well, whatever is spoken about there. So if we paskin like that shita, so why would this person not have children because of his avain of not living and going to Eretz Yisrael if he's anyway not mechuyev to go to Eretz Yisrael? So what are we talking about? So he says, one second, listen to the Beis Levi. So he says that the answer is that we have to know that what if a person is not going to Eretz Yisrael, and really they could, and what really they couldn't. They can't go to Eretz Yisrael because they live in a certain generation, and in that generation it's not doable for whatever reason, for them, for their wife, for the kids, whatever the situation is. and it's not doable. But if it was doable, would they go? So this person could be taken to task because he doesn't have this ambition and he doesn't have this idea that I'm only not doing it because I'm an oines. The minute that I could do the mitzvah, the minute I could fulfill this mitzvah, I would fulfill it. So that's why he could be nenash. So therefore, it says the Beis Halevi that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who really knows whether the Torah of Eines could really apply to a person, because he knows that is this person only not doing it because he's a Eines, or because he doesn't really care about this mitzvah or whatever. Here, Christ was serving over the Zorah here, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that this wasn't, so to speak, it wasn't their fault. Now, again, we see from the Beis Halevi that there was HaKadosh Baruch Hu was looking from above, and he was seeing everything that Klal Yisrael was going through in Mitzrayim, and he was hearing their cries, and he understood their plight much more than they did. Somebody looking on the Malachim would say, they're Avodah Zarah. Why is saving them? Because Baruch Hu he knew that no, this is Klal Yisrael. This is the seed of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that they haven't let go, and they're anusim. And this is a terrible plight that has befallen them. And he understood the depth of the sorrow that was upon them, and the worthiness of why they should still be saved. And I want to share with you a nice shot from the Beis Halevi. Beis Halevi says that Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked him to go to Paro and save the Jewish people, and he was very reluctant. He said, "Who am I that I should go to Paro? Mi anochi ki yelech Parai, v'chiyayiti es bnei Yisrael mi Mitzrayim? Am I going to take the bnei Yisrael from Mitzrayim?" So what was Moshe Rabbeinu's reluctance? Why didn't he want to take them out? He didn't. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to take the Jewish people out, even when they're not deserving, so what does that bother you? So they're not deserving. What's chus? Rashi says, "Mi anochi mani chashuv l'daber hamamlachim." What is my importance? And secondly, v'chiyayiti es bnei Yisrael. V'hapa imani chashuv mazachu Yisrael le'yasus lamnes. What's their merit to have a miracle done to them? So let's say there's no merit. So what does that bother you? And what did Hashem answer him? Hashem answered him, Ki eya imach. Because Baruch Hu said, Eke asher eke. I'll be with you. So, because Baruch Hu said, I'll be with you. V'sha'altem aschus b'yadam, asidim l'kabel of Torah, Rashi brings. That right now they don't have a schus, but I'm going to give them a merit, because I know what they're right for. They're going to come, and they're going to come out, and Tavdanas Lakim B'Harazeh. They're going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're going to be Mekabel the Torah on this mountain, on Har Sinai. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I know that what the schus is. So this is what the Beis Halevi says. A beautiful idea, and then he brings a medrash, amazing. There's a machlokes. We say in the Haggadah, so Pesach, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is chishev es haketz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a cheshbon. He makes a cheshbon of the kates that Klal Yisrael, when they could go out of Mitzrayim, because they were supposed to be there for 400 years, and they were only there for 210 years. So one of the pshatim, a remez, is they were lacking 190 years. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a cheshbon of how to figure out the 190 years started from the birth of Yitzchak instead, because then they were already not owning the land, and they were gerim in a land that wasn't theirs. And Yaakov went through so much tzarais and galus by Lavan, and with all that he suffered. But so one of the Ramazim is Kates. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chishev es haketz. Probably maybe somebody says this by your Seder. It's one of the favorite Divrei Torah by the Seder. What's the gematria of Kates? Kuf Tzadik is 190. 190. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calculates the missing 190 years of how to fulfill them. But the Beis Levi brings that there's a machlekes whether they went out, because you calculated they finished the year, or because the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I'm taking them out early. There's a medrash that says that Klal Yisrael asked Moshe Rabbeinu, we have a Messiah 400 years, and we only here for 210 years. How could you take us out now? How could you be taking us out? That's what they asked Moshe Rabbeinu, according to the medrash. So Moshe told them, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to redeem you, he doesn't look at the calculation of what you're up to. HaKadosh Baruch Hu skips over the edges, the limits. Excuse me. And he brings the Gula. So according to this, we see that they went out early. Now the Beis Levi has a pshat that he says in a whole bunch of different places. It boggles the mind, this pshat, but he says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, and he took them out early, because he took them out early, they were going to have to make this up in future Goliaths, because they weren't really finished the tikkun that needed to be accomplished, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu did this for Klal Yisrael's sake, because in other words, in a sense, it would have been better to leave us there for another 190 years. But it wasn't possible. It became impossible because HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that Klal Yisrael reached the lowest levels, that if he doesn't redeem them now, they would still have to remain there because they wouldn't be redeemable anymore. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu took them out then. But taking them out then wasn't just now the Geula's over. This was going to be, they're going to get the Torah, and they're going to become the Jewish people. They're going to receive the destiny of HaKadosh Baruch Hu guarding them forever and bringing them towards the Geula HaSida. But they weren't done. They weren't done when they left Mitzrayim. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw this in the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was asking him to take the Bnei Yisrael out, that he should do it. And he said, Moshe, the Medrash says, Moshe said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you want me to take them out? When Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim, didn't you tell him, I will go down with you, and I will come back up with you? Is this the fulfillment of the promise, I will come back up with you? Am I Moshe? The Anochi Alcha Gam Aloi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you said you're going to do it. Why are you sending me? So Moshe didn't want to do it. He didn't want that there should be a shliach. But as Baruch Hu told him that Klal Yisrael needs to be redeemed now, and they don't have a schus. And if they would have had a schus, I could take them out early, and I wouldn't have to use you as a shliach. But they don't have the schus, and because I just have to take them out now, and it has to be a shliach, and they'll be tabdin as lakim b'har hazeh. So, and that's the schus. I'm taking them out before that. So, I want to end off with along these lines. The Beis Levi says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Till in Kuf Gimel, Yediah Drach of the Moshe, Livnei Yisrael Ali Laisav." HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes His ways known to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Klal Yisrael, that which he does. Ali Laisav, what he's doing. So, what does this mean? It means to Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't tell them, Eke Asher Eke. Moshe says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you want me to tell them, Eke Asher Eke, I'll be with them in this Golus, like I'll be with them in future Golusim. It's bad enough this Golusim, they can't hear that there's going to be a future Golus. Well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what are you telling them, Eke Asher Eke? They can't hear this now. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, you're right. I don't mean to tell them that there'll be a future Golus. I'll be with them now, I'll be with them in a future Golus. What I mean to say is that you should know this. Just tell them, tell them one thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll be with you. I'm taking you out. But you, Moshe Rabbeinu, you understand that there's going to be a future Golusim because that's what you want to know. Why am I sending you? Why am I sending you? You should be the Shliach. Because the answer is that they weren't Zaycha yet, and this Geula is bringing them out to be a connection to prepare them for the future. So the Beis HaLevi says in another place that's why, based on the Medrash, that Tisha B'Av always is on the same night as the Leil HaSeder, because this was even on the Leil HaSeder there was going to have to be a Tisha B'Av, but the Tisha B'Av was going to be because there was going to have to be a future Golus, but because it wasn't fully complete. But this we got by the Leil HaSeder, we got, and this we still have with us in Golus, is that Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Eke Asher Eke. Hashem is Shomer Yisrael La'ad. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I will be with you in that Golus, I'll be with you in this Golus. I'm taking you out of Mitzrayim early because I'm committed to your destiny, and it's for the sake of being able to get you started, that you shouldn't get lost in Golus Mitzrayim. And even though it's not ready to be finished off, I'm committed to this destiny of the Jewish people, and that's why I'm taking you out. And that's where we get to at the end of the Seder, that we're focused on the Gula Asida, we're focused on the Kadosh Baruch Hu being Shomer, guarding Klal Yisrael. So in the end, we open the door, right? And we remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects us from the Goyim, and so Leil HaShimurim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects us on this night. So why now, says the Beis HaLevi, why after now when we're up to the fourth kais, now we pour it? So he says, based on the Gemara, that why aren't we worried about Zugais? There's a concept in the Gemara Pesachim discusses that it's a bad sign for Klal Yisrael to have Zugais, that could bring Zugais is even numbers. If one cup, you should have not two. If you have a second one, you should have a third one. But here we have four. So one of the pshatim in the Gemara is that it's a Leil Shimurim. We don't have to worry about this. There's mazikim. There's damaging angels. There's hard forces out there, but we don't have to worry about them on this night. We don't care about mazikim. We don't have to worry about zugais, about pairs. So says the Beis HaLevi. Therefore, when we pour the fourth kais, we show this is a Leil Shimurim. So we open up the door. So I'm adding in on my own that according to the other Beis HaLevi, this is what we're getting to in the Seder. We're getting to this point where we realize that it's Leil Shimurim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always guarding over us. We're in Golus now, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out because He's always watching over us, and He's getting us to the point where we're going to have the Gula Asida of Emher V'Yameinu. We should all have a wonderful Pesach coming in less than 2 weeks now already, and we should prepare the matzahs, prepare the yayin, prepare the haggadahs, prepare everything, and there's a lot of sensitivity goes into preparing for the Seder, thinking about what this person would be good for them to hear, what that person would be good for them to hear. Sometimes we're not leading the Seder, somebody is sitting at somebody else's Seder, so now how could we help the Seder should run smoothly, and
your door's open, so you don't know who's going to come in, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we don't know who's going to be at the Seder. I don't know who's going to be at the Seder. I'm going to be at my father-in-law's Seder. So, but this...
you going to the States?
We're going to Atlanta. But some of it is listening to others. Some of it's getting a chance to tell over. But it's also a feeling that Hakar Satayv, that Kadosh Baruch Hu took us out. The more we appreciate that Kadosh Baruch Hu is committed to the destiny of the Jewish people, and is taking us through through that Golus and the depths that Golus reached, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw us out of it. And the depths of this Golus, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still with us, guarding us and watching over us. Hisha Amdala Veseinu, Lanu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's commitment to us and His promise. That's what stands by us in this generation, every generation. Yeshakach.